Welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a really fascinating creative blueprint today. We're looking at the foundational concepts for an ultra-realistic wildlife documentary. But get this, instead of the African savanna or, the Amazon rainforest, the whole thing is centered entirely on a stray cat's struggle for survival right in the middle of a harsh urban environment. It's a completely fresh perspective on what we call the concrete jungle.
So it really starts with a fundamental question. How exactly does a filmmaker take everyday, common urban challenges, stuff we literally walk past on our morning commutes, and transform them into a gripping, emotional wildlife narrative? Well, it requires a massive shift in perspective. You've got to drop the camera all the way down to street level and start treating the city not as a human habitat, but as a completely hostile ecosystem.
Moving into Section 1, a harsh urban environment. The source material here dictates a very specific, dramatic atmosphere, and it's totally driven by the relentless passage of time. The documentary is designed to track this cinematic atmospheric progression. We start with a dramatic sunrise, which in this context doesn't just mean a pretty morning. It actually signifies a brand new, exhausting day of survival. From there, the timeline shifts into afternoon storms, focusing on that desperate scramble to find shelter from heavy, punishing rain. And finally, we move into the sunset, which beautifully, yet kind of menacingly, signals the encroaching cold night. The environment itself is essentially a main character here, and it is entirely unforgiving.
And notice how the narrow alleys are framed as the primary high-stakes battleground for our protagonist. We aren't looking at wide-open city parks here, right? We're squeezed into tight, claustrophobic alleyways, because this is where the desperate search for food actually happens. By framing the documentary in these confined spaces, the filmmaker instantly creates this palpable sense of tension and entrapment. There are very few places to run, and danger could literally be around any blind corner.
Which brings us to Section 2, navigating daily dangers. You have to realize every single day is a highly calculated operation for this animal. Step 1, relentlessly searching those alleys for food just to stave off gnawing hunger. Step 2 is avoiding busy traffic. That's a uniquely urban hazard where giant roaring machines present instant, lethal danger. And Step 3 is the constant need to find cover from sudden, severe rain. It's just a continuous, exhausting cycle of risk assessment and evasion, just trying to make it to the next morning. This brilliantly illustrates the dual nature of her enemies. She isn't just fighting one type of battle out there. On one side, you have living threats. She has to outsmart predatory, dangerous dogs and deal with intense, fierce competition from other animals for incredibly scarce resources. But then, on the flip side, she's simultaneously battling environmental threats, searing hunger, freezing cold nights, and violent storms. It's basically this pincer movement of danger that requires complete physical and mental exhaustion just to survive.
On to Section 3, cinematic wildlife storytelling.
The visual blueprint here demands incredibly high-end execution. The documentary specifically calls for 4K resolution quality, ensuring every bit of grit and grime of the city is fully visible. It mandates natural lighting to maintain that raw, authentic feel, so no artificial Hollywood studio lights here. Furthermore, it relies on smooth camera movements to give it that premium, sweeping wildlife documentary feel, which really contrasts with the chaotic subject matter. But most importantly, it calls for a real focus on detailed fur textures. Why? Well, because seeing the matted fur, the wet coat after a storm, or those bristling hairs during a confrontation, it physically grounds the viewer right in the gritty, tactile reality of this ultra-realistic aesthetic.
And to further heighten the cinema of the piece, the blueprint calls for action to be right in focus through the use of slow-motion running sequences. By slowing down the footage, the mundane act of a cat fleeing a dog or darting across a dangerous street gets elevated into a massive dramatic spectacle. It allows us, the audience, to really see the sheer athleticism, the muscle tension, and the pure desperation in every single stride. It completely forces us to appreciate the actual mechanics of her survival.
Let's hit Section 4, protecting the kittens. This entire struggle is anchored by a really deep, resonant, emotional core. The source explicitly mandates capturing these tender, emotional moments of a mother desperately protecting her vulnerable kittens against all of these staggering odds. And honestly, this changes everything. It transitions the story from just a simple tale of self-preservation into a profound narrative of maternal sacrifice. Every piece of food she finds, every risk she takes in traffic, every dog she evades, it's all ultimately about keeping that hidden family alive.
To truly make us feel this emotional storytelling, the camera relies heavily on the age-old window to the soul. The blueprint specifically highlights the use of intimate, tight close-up shots of the cat's eyes and facial expressions. And this is a total masterstroke in documentary filmmaking. By focusing on her eyes, showing the fear, the exhaustion, the alertness, and, of course, the tenderness when she looks at her kittens, the filmmaker completely bypasses the fact that she's an animal, forging an immediate, powerful, empathetic link with us, the human audience. We stop seeing a stray cat and we start seeing a struggling mother.
Finally, Section 5, Finding a Safe Home.
The blueprint dictates a deeply satisfying, triumphant conclusion here. Despite the severe hunger, the terrifying run-ins with dangerous dogs, the busy traffic, and those fierce cold storms, the whole narrative arc culminates in the ultimate resolution, successfully finding a safe, secure home for her kittens. It brings the documentary to a close on a note of hard-won victory, proving that all her suffering and endurance actually paid off. She achieves the ultimate goal of absolutely any creature in the wild, which is securing the next generation.
Analyzing this documentary blueprint completely reframes how we view our own daily environments. I mean, the concrete jungle is, in fact, a very real jungle for the creatures living right at our feet. And it leaves us with a pretty powerful thought to chew on. Next time you're rushing to work or just walking through the city dodging rain puddles, take a second to look down an alleyway. Whose epic cinematic survival story are you obliviously walking past every single day?